Hi, I wanted to make this video because I've been thinking. And this time I've been thinking about emotions. And the reason I've been thinking about emotions is because I've been aware for a while that I might have a few difficulties with emotions. So it's been on my list of things to make a video about so that I could think through exactly what those difficulties are and whether there's anything useful to learn from them. So, what is it that makes me think that I have some difficulties with emotions? Well, I think there seems to be a bit of a mismatch between the fact that I know I'm a caring and sentimental kind of person, but yet I don't tend to have the same sort of emotional reaction as other people when something emotional is happening. So I've always been aware that that can make me seem a bit cold, but yet I know that I'm not cold. So that leaves me wondering whether or not I'm even having the same emotions as other people. And if I'm not, then why not? And if I am, where are they going if they're not coming to the surface? So I've been in situations where most other people are crying and I'm not, and also the other way around. So what is it that's happening to me that's causing the disconnect with emotions? So I've always been a bit confused by it, but I've never really looked any deeper, and I think I mostly just try and stay away from emotional situations if I can, and then I don't have to think about it. But when you've been around for a while, like I have, emotional situations do tend to find you in the end. So it's a subject that's been on my mind again lately. So I think the underlying problem is that I don't trust my emotions not to let me down by acting differently to what other people might expect. And I'm also a bit worried that if the emotions are actually there but not coming out, they might show up in other ways in the future. So, how did I start to realise that this was happening to me? Well, I think to be honest, I've been working backwards, having recently found out that this sort of thing can be an autistic trait. So I've been learning about autistic traits in general, and when I read about the link with emotions, it made a lot of sense to me. And I've noticed that I tend to react with logic first rather than emotion, especially if the emotional situation involves a problem that needs to be solved. I can get so involved in solving the problem that it can seem like the emotion of the situation never actually comes. Because by the time I've finished processing the logic or solving the problem, it can feel a bit too distant to still be able to stir up any strong emotions. So I've often wondered if there might be something wrong with me when I can see other people reacting emotionally to something and it just isn't having the same impact on me. And then other times I can be feeling emotional when there doesn't even seem to be anything to feel emotional about. So I wonder if anyone else can relate to that. And I can remember being in the cinema a few years ago, and a lot of people were crying because the subject was quite emotional. And I was definitely aware that it was an emotional story, but it didn't make me feel like crying. I think I was probably more caught up in trying to decide whether the people in the story had made the right decisions. And as we were leaving, a lady said to me that she kept glancing at me and wondering what was wrong with her because she was getting so upset and I wasn't. So I explained to her that I almost never cry at things that I watch, so the problem was most likely with me and not with her. And she seemed to feel better when she heard that. I mean, I didn't feel better though, and I wondered again if something might be broken inside me. And it's not like I didn't feel anything, or didn't understand why other people were crying. It just didn't have that effect on me. And I can remember a similar thing happening when I was a child and was watching the E.T. movie at a birthday party. So by the end of the movie, everyone else was crying, but I wasn't. And it confused me why my reaction was different. And I think it confused other people too. So if only I'd known then what I'm starting to realise now, that I seem to have a brain that works in a slightly different way to a lot of other people. And one of the ways that that difference shows up is in how I experience emotions. So whether or not I'm officially autistic maybe doesn't really matter. But in the process of learning about autism, I've found out a few things about myself that have been quite enlightening. And one of the biggest revelations for me is about how autistic people often experience and process emotions differently from other people. So I'm not cold or broken, I just have a different way of experiencing emotion. And the problem only really starts to arise when we start comparing ourselves to other people. And when that happens, it's often not comfortable to discover that you're a bit different, especially when you're a child and just want to fit in with your friends. And I probably tried to make myself cry at the end of that E.T. movie so that I could be the same as everyone else. And now I know that behaviour is called masking, and that's sort of when you try and change your behaviour to match other people. But I think naturally, as I've got older and more comfortable with who I am, I've probably moved away from feeling the need to pretend about my emotions. But it still feels quite nice to have a bit more of an explanation to help me understand why I often feel a bit different or misunderstood when it comes to emotions. And actually, if I give you another example from more recent times, it might help you to understand what I mean and how it sometimes affects me in my life. So if you've watched some of my previous videos, you might already know that my husband had a cardiac arrest in the night a few years ago, and I was the first responder who helped to save his life. So when people hear the story of what happened, they ask how I managed to stay calm in a situation like that. And up until now, I've always said that I don't know. But now I think I might finally have the answer. Because my brain doesn't go straight to emotion in a situation like that, it goes to logic. It's asking, what do I need to do to solve this problem? And I could see exactly what I needed to do to solve that problem, so I did it. I phoned an ambulance, I dragged him onto the floor by his ankles, and I gave him CPR until the ambulance arrived. That was it, job done. No tears, no screaming, just solving the problem that was right in front of me. So, does that make me cold? I mean, it could certainly appear that way. Does it make me useful in a crisis? Absolutely. But did I choose to react like that? No, it was just what happened. And I can remember the paramedic saying to me afterwards, it's okay to cry if you need to. And I can remember saying, what would be the point in that? And I know that they were just trying to be kind and supportive, and I didn't mean to be rude, but I was working with logic and I had no idea what I would be crying for because I still had no idea what was happening or what the outcome was likely to be. And even to this day, I don't think I've ever cried about what happened that night. despite how hard it's been and how many challenges it's brought to our lives, I've always put my energy into solving the problem. And because it's never been solved, I've never reached the point of fully understanding what we're dealing with. And so if I cried now, I don't think it would even seem remotely related to that night. So maybe one day the emotions of that time will finally come out, or maybe they already have and I just didn't realise. Or maybe it's too far in the past now to be able to stir up strong emotions. I just don't know. And I have read that emotions can can come out much later, but I'm just not sure how anyone can actually know that. And if I do feel emotions, I try not to hold them in like I probably used to when I was younger. So hopefully I'm not storing up a volcano for the future, but maybe only time will really tell. I think hopefully, as long as I feel okay and don't feel like I'm hiding things, then I think I'll be doing the best that I can. And I'm a very honest sort of person, so I'm not comfortable with pretending to feel something that I don't. But I also don't want to upset people by seeming like I don't care, because I don't react in the emotional way that they might expect or want me to. And having those worries has often made me a bit uneasy around emotional situations. But I do think I'd already made quite good progress in accepting myself for who I am and being more comfortable with that. But I think having this extra awareness of how my brain processes emotion should hopefully help me feel even more at peace with it. Because I might even be able to explain it to someone else now if I had to. So, what have I learned from all this thinking about emotion? And is there anything that I want to take away from it? So, I think that whether I'm autistic or not, I do seem to deal with emotions in an autistic way. And now that I've started to understand that, I think it will help me feel a bit more at peace with the fact that sometimes I react in a different way to emotional situations than other people around me. I've learnt that it's useful to try and remember not to judge anyone in the way that they react to emotional situations by comparing their reaction to yours. So whether there's a strong reaction or a lack of reaction, it's instinctive for the person and there shouldn't be any rights or wrongs. And I think that's especially important for children who are forming opinions about themselves based on what other people tell them. We've all got different brains and experience the world differently, so there's no reason why we should expect our reactions to all be the same. So whether you react like I do or whether you're the total opposite, we're all just experiencing things in our own way, and that's okay. So I'm going to try and remember that next time I'm in an emotional situation with other people, and maybe you will too. So I hope you've taken something useful from this video, but I think that's all for this time. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!